Today's episode is brought to you by Taft Law and its Franchise Advance program, a one-of-a-kind program developed by your host, Josh Brown, to help entrepreneurs assess, convert, and grow your business the right way through sound franchise structures. To learn more, go to taftlaw.com and type Franchise Advance Program in the search bar.
If you think like, act like, or are trying to grow like a franchise, then the Franchise Euphoria podcast is for you. Hello and welcome everybody. Josh Brown here, and I created this podcast for one main goal: to help people who are trying to grow their business through franchising or franchise-like structures to do it the right way. I've been practicing law now as a franchise lawyer for many, many years, and I've seen it done the right way and the wrong way. And this podcast is not filled with a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. Rather, I talk with real people, people who have been there, have done it, are doing it right now. And I also dive deep into specific topics related to franchising. So if this is of interest to you, you are at the right place. Enjoy. Thrilled to have on Chris Prefontaine, who is the 4-time best-selling author of Real Estate on Your Terms, The New Rules of Real Estate Investing, and Sell with Authority for Real Estate Investors. He's also founder of the Wicked Smart Companies and host of the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast. Chris has been in real estate for over 31 years. His experience ranges from constructing new homes in the 1990s and owning a Realty Executive Franchise to running his own investments, commercial and residential, and coaching clients throughout North America. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Josh. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you have such a varied background in real estate. And of course, you know, here on Franchise Euphoria, we've got our eye on the franchise community. And so often franchising involves real estate. Sometimes it involves leasing real estate. Sometimes it involves owning real estate. And sometimes it involves no real estate. But tell us a little bit about your background being in the real estate world for over 31 years and how that tied in a little bit to your franchise experience.
Yeah, so I'll be brief. We don't want to put everybody to sleep for 32 years experience, but I started building homes in the 90s. I then bought the Realty Executive Franchise around 94, 95-ish. I built that up with one intent always, Josh. It wasn't to be in it for life. It wasn't to build a bunch of other territories. It was to sell it to, I ended up selling it ultimately to Coldwell Banker in 2000. I then went off and was coaching mostly realtors at the time, although I'm in the investing world now. It was through U.S. and Canada, and that led me up to about the 2008 crash. And then coming out of the crash, we chose to originally re-engineer the entire business to not involve banks when we buy real estate, to not involve our own cash when we buy real estate. And that's how we operate today. And I say we're a family company, my son and son-in-law, and we then buy and sell in our area the way I just described, but we also teach students all over North America to do the same.
Yeah, talk about that, because obviously, it's such a big component when somebody's looking to buy a franchise, as an example, and they're looking at the real estate component. The traditional model is, hey, if you don't have the access to capital or capital or hand, or you just don't want to use your own capital, you're going to go to a bank. Oftentimes you're going to go try to look for an SBA 7A type loan or another related type loan to go borrow the money and definitely in utilize some sort of banking component to it. Talk about your system that does not do that.
Yeah, and let me just, this is important that you asked that, and I'll preface it with, I had no choice. So when I came out of the crash, my credit was in the toilet, my cash was in the negative, and I'm being literal with that. That's not being facetious. So I had no choice in that, but I wanted to stay in the game. And I said, well, how can I do that? And so let's define some kind of guidelines. And
well, Chris, not to interrupt you real quick, but my tagline for banks. My tagline for banks is, we're here when you need us the least.
Oh, I love you even more now.
Well, listen, I love banks. I'm not trying to beat up on banks, but here's what I mean by that tagline. Banks are willing to loan you money out the wazoo when you don't really need them, when you have great credit, when you have good collateral, when you have money already.
It's 100%
they're
true.
not really. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So what do we do then? We said, all right, well, I want to play in this space still. So some of the rules were simply, if we're not going to use banks, how can we acquire real estate or control real estate or both? And that is, we only do it 3 ways to this day. Owner financing is our most favorite, and for people looking to build franchise or put buildings up, we seek out a third of the properties in the United States are free and clear. There's no mortgage on them. That's a pretty solid stat. Depending on what market you're in, it's higher or lower. And so when we seek those out, we give them what price they want, typically, as long as we get a nice long term, like the building I am physically in is a 20-year term. I did not have to go through the grueling process of underwriting or the pain of putting up a big down payment. So that's really cool for people to know in the franchise space that they can go do that.
Well, let's pause there for a second. Wait, hold on. Let's pause there. Let's break this down a little bit. Owner financing, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're talking about is somebody owns a property free and clear, and you go, and when you buy it, instead of going to the bank and having them loan money to give to the owner, there's essentially a promissory note or some sort of note between the purchaser and the owner of the land, and then you're just paying them over time. Is that what you're speaking of?
Yep, spot on. It's exactly how I acquired my own building. And let me just say this, this has been around since, if you read the book, the newest book about the Vanderbilts, this has been around since like pre-banking, 1600s. This is not new. It's just that it's becoming more and more popular as banks get tighter and tighter.
Well, the risk, of course, is, to the person who's selling it, they have to be sure that the buyer is legit, right? I mean, because they're coming in and they're basically financing that purchase. And if they're okay to do that and they believe in the buyer, but that kind of shines the light a little bit more on the person who's purchasing, that land. Is that right?
It does. Yeah. In our case, so if you're just a single buyer buying for your first time or a homeowner, yeah, they're going to want a decent down payment. Whereas we go in and do 0 to little down payment. And to top it off, we make principal only payments. So we're not usually prioritizing interest. So that really provides a massive pay down of principal and provides a nice recession hedge. And we're able to do that in the community because we do certify people in creative real estate, and they have a little bit of credibility behind them when they go in the door.
And then what's the second way besides owner financing?
Lease purchase. It's also a good one for your franchise owners as well, listening, because lease purchase lets you structure a lease with a seller. The seller feels a little bit more comfortable, especially if you don't have the experience, because they don't transfer the deed. And then whether you're using that building or property for your own use, or whether you're exiting it like we do for investment reasons, it's a very, very simple, because again, transfer of title doesn't happen.
So it's a lease so you're leasing it over a period of time, and then at some point in time, does title and deed transfer over after you've paid for it, or never transfers?
Yeah, you can. So you can do a 5 or 10 with an option to buy that seller out at any time. So in the case of residential properties, we teach investors how to wind out of that. But in case of a building for, say, a franchise owner, they could do a nice long-term lease, build up their business, and then go for conventional financing. So you're not stressed out. You have plenty of time to work that. And the banks tend to look at it, if you're a business owner in that building, the banks tend to look at that a little more favorable, almost like a refi versus a new purchase, because you go in and say, look, I've been in there for 6 years. My business is thriving. And so it's a little bit easier to finance that.
And what's the third option?
It's called subject to existing financing. It's it's always great, but it's great right now because subject to existing financing means I'm going to buy your property, your building, or your house. The loan's going to stay in your name. You're the guarantor still, yet I own the property. Now, that's more prone, unlike the owner financing, that's more prone to the seller that sort of needs financial relief. Like they just want to be done for whatever reason. They have a building that they're tired of, or, death, divorce, COVID, these life events that happen that they just need closure on. Why
would they talk to me about that? Explain that. Why would somebody, if I'm a seller and you're going to take over, you're going to own the property, why would I still stay on the loan?
Well, that's the only way we buy. We don't assume, because assuming loans means you go apply, like taking out bank loans. We're looking for people that have a headache that, when we're in this category, that needs solving. And so they want financial relief usually tomorrow. And the conventional market either can't provide that quickly, or they owe so much. This is true right now as the market's shifting. They owe so much that if they sold it conventionally, they might have to come out of pocket, and they can't or aren't willing to. Those type of scenarios lend itself to subject to.
So when talk a little bit, tie this in, because you've got a nice background over 31 years, and I know some of the systems and some of the trainings that you offer are sort of franchise-like systems, not quite franchise systems. But the audience here is made up of people who are franchise owners, owner operators, franchisors, people considering to get into franchising, whether it be as a franchisee or turn their businesses into franchising. Talk from the real estate side of things, how you think that ties in, to franchising and some of the ways that you kind of train and teach through your Smart Real Estate Coach program.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you, because we just hit sort of people that maybe already own one and they want to buy property, and now people that are looking for one. It does look, taste, and smell like it, because here's how it looks. In real estate in general, I think there's an enormous gap between someone learning a niche or going to a seminar and then actually going out and doing a deal. So it takes on the franchise behavior in that there's different programs with us, and they range from literally a high of $250,000 down to $5,000. It just depends on how aggressive they want to get and frankly, who they want to work with. Because what happens is they engage a certified coach when they do that. So different than going out and building a building for your franchise. They are engaging a coach that's going to live in the trenches with them, meaning as they learn what we teach, how do I talk to sellers? How do I find these properties? How do I convert those to our trademark 3 payday system? How do I do all that? Well, we're running with you, either a coach or at the highest level. I personally work with them. And so they're going to go ahead and do those types of deals with us from anywhere from 18 months to 3 years. And then they can go off and do it on their own if they want, as fast or slow as they want. So it's like they.
So what do they do? Do they just pay a monthly? Do they pay a monthly fee, or how's your model work?
Two ways. The fees I mentioned are the upfront fees, and then we revenue share on all the deals. So it's a win-win. There's no out-of-pocket cost. There's only revenue share on deals completed. So you're essentially like partners in the deal during your contract period.
And how much of a percentage are you taking? Does it depend on the deal?
No, not the deal. Good question. It depends on the level they entered. So I personally coach, for example, a level called High 6 Associate and Chairman's Club. And the Chairman's Club, because of the upfront, requires no rev share. And the High 6 allows the student to keep 70% of the profits, and we retain 30%. And then if you go all the way down to the lowest level, it's, say a $5,000 entry fee, they keep 40%. So it just depends, again, on how aggressive. If they're full-time, they're going to go at it. Obviously, the higher levels work very, very well, lucrative.
And you said throughout North America, is that where you are? I mean, predominantly in the U.S.?
Predominantly, yeah. There's some a teeny bit in UK and Canada, but we're 98% U.S. right now.
So take a minute, talk about your franchise experience. I mean, what was that like for you? I mean, obviously you're an entrepreneur, you in the thralls of it sounds like being somewhat decimated back 2008, 2009, really kind of created this from that, which you hear a lot of, right? I mean, it's not common because it takes an incredible amount of effort and drive, and planning to basically, go from nothing to build up something like this, especially in a down economy. But talk about what that was like for you as a franchisee. I know it sounds like you sold to Coldwell Banker. So, but what was that experience like for you?
I had a great experience with them. So I was with them from 95 to 2000. And I think they're the same exact group. There's 3 guys owned the entire territory, had sold that to us. But because they're so close geographically, they stayed with us almost like we do with our associates. So I still to this day have nothing but good things rather to say about them. And that was the Realty Executives franchise.
But it was a real estate. It was an agent type franchise, right? The Realty Executive franchise.
Yeah, different than I do now. It was brokerage. So I was a broker owner, and then through their system, we would recruit agents in our own in-house brokerage. And we only had the one branch, but obviously there are many owners, just like other franchises you guys have featured. I'm sure that have multiple branches.
So in your system, how are you going out and finding people who are good fits to take part in your system?
Mostly shows like this and our events, because it speaks to who? It speaks to the W-2 employee that even more so since COVID, but always looking for, they got a 5, 6, 7-figure job and they're looking to escape that and go into their own business. That's a great fit for us. And again, since COVID has been an onslaught of that. Other people that seek us out are people that are in other niches in real estate, because real estate tends to be in many niches very transactional. I do a deal, I get paid. We've trademarked a 3 payday system where you get paid now, sure, but you get monthly cash flow and then long-term cash flow. So that just our exposure tends to bring those type of people in the door as well.
People are attracted to real estate for a lot of different reasons. I think one of the attractions is people see sort of the passive, or what they might deem to be a passive nature of it, or, absentee nature of it. Talk about that a little bit, and the realities of, owning real estate, buying real estate, growing real estate, sort of the ups and downs. I mean, obviously, you have the highs and lows with the markets, but just as somebody who comes in and is going to do that, talk a little bit about what that's really like. I mean, certainly, there are people who own a lot of properties, and it's pretty absentee, and there's a recurring cash flow and so on and so forth. But talk about sort of a full 360 approach to that, and what the realities of that is really like.
Well, and I think what you're alluding to, just to make sure I'm tracking with you, is how they can do it and build it properly, right? Versus transactional.
Yes.
Okay. So when too many times in a lot of the other niches, and I just alluded to that kind of that one pay, do a deal, get paid, not to burst everybody's bubble who thought that was the answer, but it is very transactional. You do a deal and you get paid. So that's not going to provide that passive nature. The buy and hold provides the passive nature if you have the proper dream team set up with property managers, et cetera, or your own team. And then the way we set it up does that as well. So you just have to make sure you plug into, like any other mentorship situation or franchise situation, making sure you're plugging into the system that does allow for the passivity. If not, quite frankly, you'd leave a W-2 to go create another job-like environment.
So talk a little bit about, as we've kind of finished up here, talk about the market today and where you think it's going. I mean, what's your assessment of the real estate market, where we are right now, and where it's going over the next, year or two? I'm less concerned with the residential, but more on the commercial side.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a little biased only because right now commercial and residential lends itself extremely well to creative real estate. Why? Because banks are tightening up, right? That's a fact. For the first time third time in 50 years, we have an affordability issue with commercial and residential, and the rates aren't even that high yet. So it is right now, if you're a franchise owner or looking to be a franchise owner and looking to have any component whatsoever of real estate in it, you've got, in my opinion, sort of a 2 to 5 year window where creative real estate is in huge demand, meaning sellers need you, sellers need a guide, sellers need a non-conventional way to do business, and you come in the door and provide that as an investment, or you come in the door and offer that as a business owner or a franchise owner looking for a building. It's perfect timing.
If you want to learn more about Smart Real Estate Coach, you can go to smartrealestatecoach.com. That's smartrealestatecoach.com. Chris, before we hang up here, tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, it's thank you for that. It's smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com. We've got somewhere in the vicinity of 450 episodes, and I try to keep it very diverse. So I don't keep it in the lane of just creative real estate. I keep it in the lane of all different niches so people can come in and sort of say, okay, that's my flavor. I want to live in that spot without having to go pay for that. And so that it's got a nice mix for everyone.
Yeah, so if you're interested in looking at sort of a non-traditional approach, it seems like, your approach is certainly that, and something for people to take a look at. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it and appreciate the exposure you give.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It really helps to get this show out to more and more people. Also, if you have any questions, have ideas for guests or topics, please email me, josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. That's josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. And finally, please note that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes and is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be any kind of legal advice. If you're seeking legal advice, please contact a lawyer. Have a great one. Happy franchising.